Welcome to Digitally Creative. I'm your host, Vincent Ferrari, and joining me this week is a podcast host in his own right, but he's also a digital content creator. I have my good friend, the one and only, Grant Alexander. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing really good. It's a beautiful day outside, 9 degrees Celsius. So I don't know what that is in freedom units. I'm
I
sorry,
have no
but
idea.
it's above freezing, which is really nice. And I'm getting a chance to chat with you. So
Yes,
it'll be a good
yes.
day.
By the way, it's about the same. No, it's 63 in New York. So
Oh,
that's what, 13, 14 for you? So it's lovely here for some reason. I have no idea why. It's been so cold recently. But look at us,
yeah.
two just old men just chatting about the weather.
Yep. I think there should. Like in Star Trek, they have the universal translator.
Mhm.
I would like that to one day happen. That if I say Celsius, you'll just hear the Fahrenheit version.
It's funny because the more you talk to people, especially if you live in the United States, because you're the odd man out in the United States, but the more I talk to people from Europe and Canada and Australia, you do kinda get you have a rough idea. Like,
Yeah.
I know that, like, 30 degrees, 32 degrees Celsius is about 100 degrees Fahrenheit-ish. So, it's like, if you
Yeah.
guys say it's 32 degrees, I'm like, "Wow, it's freaking hot," you know? Like, I don't need to know the exact temperature to know, like, "Oh, I feel bad for you guys," you know?
Yeah.
But,
I think 39 is 104.
yeah, that's oof.
Yeah.
One of I so way back in a prior life, I was in Vegas, 2003 in August, and it was 116 degrees.
That's a big no from me.
So I remember we were being taken to different timeshares, and we drove
Ah,
past a bank. We drove past a bank, and the banks always have the time and temperature on the signs outside. And this bank had the time and temperature, and it's like 1:30 in the afternoon. It's 116 degrees. And I laughed and I pointed at the sign. I went, "Oh, look, the sign's broken." And the woman who was giving us the tour is like, "No, it's probably about right. It's probably a few degrees warmer than that." I'm like, "Oh,
wow.
really?" Like, I know the old joke of it's a dry heat, but it really is true. Like 116 in Vegas does not feel like 116 in New York. 116 in New York, you would just want to die. Like
Yep.
it's the end of it. But yeah, so there's our segment on the weather. That's our thing of the week, weather.
The weather of the week with Grant
Mhm.
and Vincent.
Yeah. So Grant and I recently, well, I mean, it isn't really a collaboration. I just helped a little bit, but we recently collaborated. Screw it. I am going to call it a collaboration.
Yeah.
We recently collaborated on a video. Grant was working on a project, and I told him, "Yeah, give me a chance. I have an idea for how I'm gonna bring this in and make it a little more interesting than me just sitting in front of a screen doing it." So I did my first ever acting in a YouTube video.
Yeah. My wife loved that part of the video. And then you started going on the computer part and she just eyes glazed over. But
It's it's such a oh my god. It's weird that that stuff is so boring because it really is boring. Like, as someone who did it for a living, I find the nitty-gritty of, like, especially Adobe Illustrator to be so boring. But
mhm,
what I find interesting is knowing that information and being able to recall it and kind of throw it out there, like, that's the exciting part to me. Like, it's boring to watch it and learn it, but once you know it, you get so happy. It's like, "Oh, I know exactly what this problem is. I know exactly how to solve it," you know? "We're making
right.
problems to solve here. Wink, wink, wink."
Well, I wouldn't say, I think we're more just putting a clamp on some things. No, I
Ooh.
don't know. That
Well, we
was a
do
really
that
bad
because we
try and
make.
segue.
We do that because we make. That's why we do
Uh,
it.
I think we should make shift into something else. Uh, Maybe we can
Uh,
talk about some working hands or something. All
while we're
that to
making
say,
it.
yeah, it was a really fun collaboration. Yeah, I was struggling with getting an SVG that it was like a hand drawn thing that my wife made. I tried to turn it into an SVG using Inkscape, and I had done that no problem in the past with like actual like bitmaps. But this
Mhm.
time, because it was a hand drawing, it had a lot of extra well, hand drawn stuff to it, little
Sure.
inconsistencies that
Yep.
that Inkscape said, I know you want all those inconsistencies. Let me put a node there for you, right? And it must, I don't know, thousands upon thousands of nodes. And as soon as I put it into Fusion, it just crashed Fusion. Uh, and then I was like, oh, I must have put the little, like, thing that there was like a thing
The
to
refinement slider that they call, I think
yeah.
they call it a refinement slider, yeah.
And I was like, oh, I must have slid it the wrong way. So I went and redid it and put it the other way. No, no, I didn't. It was even worse. I couldn't even load it into Fusion, and that's when I texted you.
Yeah, so I've had it's the first thing I ever learned. It's very interesting because the first thing I ever learned with Fusion was how to put SVGs in, because that was how I was doing the same thing you were doing. I was using it for 3D printing. So I would bring
Right.
something in as an SVG and tweak it enough and extrude certain parts to create different depths and then
Hmm.
3D print it. And I bumped into the same thing. It was before I really learned how to use Adobe Illustrator, and I would just, it got to a point where, up until I learned Illustrator, it was just like, can't use it. Like, that was it. It was just punch out on the files. Like, nope, can't do it. Oh well, it's too complicated. And then you start learning, stuff like the simplify command. And what's cool about it is, like, I know Inkscape can do it. I know Affinity Designer can do it, but I just use Illustrator all day long, so it's like second language for me. And it's funny how much you can pull away and not affect the actual image.
Right.
It's crazy. It's like when you're saving, JPEGs and PNGs, and you can lower that quality slider to like 60% and not visually be able to perceive a difference at all in the file. It's
Right.
but we
What and
complicate we complicate stuff.
and then I had to go in Fusion and then, like, yeah, like, make it even simpler. I had to go through and
Mhm.
delete even more stuff so that it just would print nicer. So I just thought, I was like, I wish I had gone, like, even further on the simplification. But
Isn't there, I mean, the one thing I find, especially dealing with a lot of like 3D printing, digital fab, I find this particularly with the CNC over all the others, because CNC, you're limited by the tool you're doing the cutting with. And I wish there was just a way to just throw a file in and have it come back and say, "Hey, listen, you want to cut this on your CNC? These are the end mills you're going to need if you make it at this size. You're going to need an end mill that can go down to at least a 32nd of an inch." Instead, what it is, it's like, and this is the process. I'm actually working on a YouTube video now about this process because it's such a pain. Where, you start with a quarter and you clear out as much as a quarter inch can clear out, and then it's like, okay, now let's add an eighth and let's clear out as much as an eighth. Now we got to, and at every step you have to look at the simulation and go, is that enough? Did I get, all right, let's add a
right.
16th now. We do a 16th. Okay, is that enough? Did I get everything? Did I get it all? Or do I need to make the graphic bigger? Or do I need to go down to a 32nd now? And it's like, I would love the software to just once be smart enough to go, hey, if you cut with a 1/16th, it's not getting into these areas. Turn those areas red. Give me some indication. Make
But,
all this
like,
artificial intelligence that they've figured out in these applications to do these calculations. That would be such an easy one that I would just love to see.
well, I think it's kind of like when you load a thing up into a 3D printing slicer and it
Mhm.
gives you the red parts are like, this isn't supported.
Yeah. Yeah.
It seems like a pretty simple, like, just the opposite of that. Like, I'm sure there's something out there. I think it's probably just not hobby grade yet.
Well, so I've used vCarve Desktop. That's as high as I've gone in CNC, like the most powerful piece of non-hobby software, and it's not in there that I know of. Unless, hey, and if it is, by the way, if it is, but by all means, put a comment below or send me an email. Let me know, because that's a feature. A lot of the stuff I do starts with a graphic design. I'm not carving shapes to make a bigger piece. It's me translating a design into a piece of wood or acrylic or metal or something. And
Hmm.
if there's a way to know that up front, without having to go to my shop or without having to look at the simulation and hope I'm seeing everything in the simulation correctly, man, that would be killer. That would be absolutely killer. The
Yeah.
last time the last time you and I talked, you were on when you were on Because We Make last. You didn't
Hmm.
even have a 3D printer.
No, I
And
didn't.
man, have you just like you've embraced it. I love how much you just got a regular old ender. Like, you didn't go crazy. You didn't get anything bonkers, and you're just you have really full on embraced 3D printing. It's amazing to see.
Yeah, so I was trying to wood carve something to make a leather stamp. Uh, and that was like I was gonna wood carve it instead of 3D printing it. Would carve out some wood, and I got to the end and I nicked the piece and it popped the piece off. So basically, the tip of something was gone. And I went, well, that's frustrating, and I just went and bought a 3D printer because I went like, this is like the amount of time I spent here. I could have spent it and made as 100 of them.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't. You don't make 100 of this the same. Like this is the thing. I think like 3D printing and all these digital things are great if you want to do a business or if you want to do something that you can't physically do. And
Hmm.
I can't. I can cut anything in any shape I want to. A CNC might do it better. It might do it faster. But if I want to go out in the workshop and have fun, that's what I go out there and do. But I can't like do the plastic. Like I can't make something out of plastic the way the 3D printer can. Like
Right.
I think there's like those 3D printer pens, but it's not the same thing, right?
Definitely not the same thing.
So that's why I embraced the 3D printer. It's because I can't do that, and I think that's where digital creation is the best. Uh, is when it's something you can't do, or if you want to produce a whole bunch of them, right?
It's very interesting you say that because that's something that Al said when he was on the show. He said the reason he got the CNC was because he isn't a great woodworker. And it's like, wow, like I've never thought of it. I've never thought of these tools as a way to fill like a skill gap, but it seems to be there is a definite segment of the people using them that looks at them that way, and that's really interesting that you said the same thing. I'm like, wow, apparently this is way more widespread than I thought, but it's an interesting way to look at it, that it kind of fills a skill gap.
Right. Well, because everything that a CNC can do, people have been doing just about
Sure,
everything. They have
sure.
been doing. It just took way more time, or it took a lot more skill. Like if you look at some of the intricate carvings from 100 years ago, yeah, a CNC could do it today, but it just they do it. The CNC does it uh, repeatably over and over and over.
Right.
Whereas you can spend the time programming it, set up all the bits and everything that you need, and then let it do it and let it do it 5 times on the same piece, and you're good to go. Whereas if you spent your entire career making these intricate church thing, carvings or whatever, and
Hmm.
then at the end of it you go, well, now I have to do it again. Well, it just, I don't know, it
That's
just
my
seems
thing.
like a
Like
CNC is better that way.
even when I'm making something as like uncomplex as a cutting board, like, I can make an order for a customer. Like, I recently, over the Christmas holidays, I made a lot of cutting boards this holiday season. I didn't even post all of them on Instagram. I was making so many of them. It was like, I don't have time to post these. I just got to finish them and get them the hell out of my shop. But even when I was making a lot of cutting boards, I mean, they're cutting boards. They're essentially a rectangle.
Right.
They're not all the same. Like, they're not all the exact same size. They're not all the exact same thickness. The juice groove isn't 1,000% precise on all of them. They
Right.
all look great. They all look great, and I've not gotten one piece of negative feedback from anything I sent out. But if I sent the same board, if someone said, "Can you make the same board 4 times?" I'd be like, "I can get pretty damn close 4 times." Like they're going to
Right.
be, you could tell they were made by the same person at the same time. They are not going to be identical, no matter what I do. I'm not capable of that. It's just,
Right.
it's
And even
that repeatability is the CNC. That's the best part of it. But other than that, yeah, you're right. You're 100% right.
even if you're doing CNC, because you're dealing with wood, they're never going to
Mhm.
look exactly the same.
That's
Like
true too.
at best, you could do like Baltic birch plywood is one of the most consistent grains, right? But then even then, they've got little knots in them, and you can tell it's wood. If you wanted it to be the exact same, you'd make it out of plastic.
That is true. That is true. Wood is not a replicatable material. Even people that make furniture, like they make furniture and you can look and you can see the joints aren't all the same, it's just it's not possible. Especially if the more manual you add into the process. Like people think a CNC, it comes off the machine and you have the thing. And it's like, no, you still have to sand it, route it, finish it, all that stuff. And once you start sanding, well, guess what? I think it was 731 Woodworks. He did a barometer, like one of those 3-piece like things that you have on the wall. It's like a
Yeah.
barometer, a hygrometer, and temperature gauge,
Right.
thermometer. Yeah, that's a
A
temperature
temperature
gauge.
gauge. Yeah.
It's like, no, it's a car. Okay. But he had one of those, and he did it three different ways. And one of them he was going to do with the CNC. And he's like, yeah, just be careful you don't knock off the edges here. And I'm like, yeah, wow. Like, you don't even think about that, but yeah, you could, you make these beautiful square crisp edges, and you take your sandpaper and you go, and it's like, oh, damn, like there it
Right.
goes, it's gone.
Definitely. And well, in this, I don't know if you know Birch Told Designs.
Yeah.
He does that
the
those
the booby guy.
crazy. Yeah, well, that's a lot what he does some really cool stuff
I
too
know.
besides boobs. But yeah, the boobs are what getting a lot of attention these days, and
He's
understandably.
known for the boobs.
Right. But like I don't know how you sand that. So you have to
very,
like I
very
guess you
carefully.
well you I guess you would enjoy it while you're doing it. But uh I look at stuff like that, I go, you have to be really good at CNC work to get it
Yeah,
so that you don't have to sand it at the end.
yeah,
Hopefully,
yeah. That was
right?
something that, I think it was Corey was talking about it when he was talking about, making the cyclone. He was talking about, just like it's real easy to make the shape. It's not easy to make it without tool marks.
Well, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All that finishing stuff. That's what's interesting, because like the people that have CNCs, anyone can cut a shape on a CNC. I mean, you literally, one of your carbide 3D takes you through 5 projects or so, your initial 5 cuts, the first 5 things that you have to do with the CNC to learn the process. And
Right.
if you get through those, you can pretty much use a CNC effectively for the very basic level of things. But what they don't teach you is that there is still a lot of like nuance to all those things. It's like, when you start watching the people that are really good with 3D carving, like him, like Dennis Van Hof, those guys, like
Hmm.
Jeff, even when he was
Yeah.
doing his, like he did the Groot bust and he did the Einstein bust, you know, to not have tool marks that you have to meticulously sand afterwards. That's where the level of skill comes in, knowing just how much to kiss the piece with another end mill just to kind of get that little bit of fine finish on it. Like, that's the skill move there. And
Right.
it's
I can't
when
even
you
do
see
that.
someone that's really good at it, it's obvious that they're really good at it.
Yeah. I sometimes have problems doing that with like using a straight saw and getting it going through there without getting a tool mark here or there. And
Yeah.
it's like I've got a fence set up and a blade and I still somehow screw it up and you can see it, right? Like I can't imagine, you know,
One of my
how they
favorite
do it.
tests. One of my favorite tests to know if you're actually good at woodworking, put a piece of cherry through your table saw. And if there's no burns on it, then you're good.
Well, I
And
guess
if you
I'm not
could,
very good at
me
woodworking.
neither. I had no idea. I had no idea. Like, I watched a Steve Ramsey video once, and he's like, "Well, cherry tends to burn easily," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"How easily could cherry really burn? Like, it, really easily? That's the answer. Really, really easily."
So anytime I'm working with cherry, maple, walnut seems to be okay, but cherry or maple I find the worst. Maple's because it really stands out because it's such a light wood.
Right,
So
right.
any little bit of burn, I make them a 16th higher than I need and throw them through my planer.
Yeah, yeah. That's
And
the it's and those are the compensation strategies that you learn. Like, I just started. I don't know who I was listening to, but they was like, yeah, a lot of woodworkers I know only started like a few years ago. I only started in 2017. Like, that's when I started woodworking, October of
yeah,
2017. And there's so many things that I've learned, like just stuff that's like, yeah, oh, you get those burn marks. Yeah, you're getting those burn marks because you're being inconsistent, dumbass. Like, be more careful when you're pushing it through. And then you
right.
go through everything and you're on your last piece. I'll tell you something I've actually gotten used to. And you're a woodworker, so you'll appreciate this. I almost never use my miter saw anymore, which
Yeah.
it took me a really long time to get to this point, but I haven't used it in like 2 months now, which is
See, I
weird for
use
me.
it for rough cutting. It's a
Yeah.
rough tool. That's so I have it's set up. So if I need to roughly cut something, or if
Mhm.
like I'm dealing with some really long piece that I'm going to throw through the table saw, and
Yeah.
I know I only need a 20-inch piece, I'll cut it to 21, and then I'll put it on the table saw and make it exact.
Mhm. I was my miter saw was a crutch,
Oh
and
yeah.
my shop doesn't really fit it. It's actually not even in my shop. It's on a table just outside my shop because my shop doesn't have enough room for the miter saw and the other
Hmm.
stuff I have. So it's like, do I have to drag this in every time I need to use it? Or can I just say, you know what? Screw it. Get used to doing this stuff on the table saw. And I have gotten used to using the table saw. I'm gonna tell you something. I'm enjoying woodworking a lot more since I stopped using the miter saw. I
Mm,
realized how much I hated it when I started really getting comfortable using the table saw for everything. And I think
yeah,
part of it is I bought a really good miter gauge, and that helps a lot. I don't have a
yeah,
sled because I have a contractor grade saw. So if you have a contractor grade saw, having a sled is just, where are you going to put it? It's going to hang off the end. It's going to fall over. But man, I don't know what possessed me. It's like maybe it was just me being lazy. Like I didn't feel like dragging the miter saw into the shop. But man, table saw, much better,
yeah.
much
If you have a
better.
good fence, a
Yes,
good
and
fence
thankfully,
or miter gauge or sled,
yes,
all
yeah,
those things. If you have it set up properly, it's just nicer. But it's just a thing. Like, if I were you, I would sell the miter saw and get a circular saw and
I have a
rough
circular
cutting.
saw.
Yeah, then
That's
you have a rough cutting circular saw when it's too big to go on the table saw for whatever reason, or you want to cut it down. Get rid of
mhm.
the miter saw. I don't know.
I
It's
that's no, that is the plan. I've
yeah,
decided finally after all these years that it's like, okay, you used it well. When I had a dedicated space for it and it was always set up, it
right.
was easy, right? I could just put a stop block on it. I could leave the stop block there because I was always cutting the same lengths. I have
Yeah,
all the stops that I use marked. I would just put the stop block on it, cut, 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 cut. But I've gotten so fast at doing that now with the table saw. Even in my most recent the shop vlog video, you can see I don't use I just got really used to using the table saw for all that stuff. And it's
right.
like, wow, now I understand why people don't have miter saws anymore. Like you don't need it as much. Maybe I don't know.
It's like a lot of tools. Depends on what you're doing, whether or not
Hmm.
it's the appropriate tool for you. And this is where we'll get back into the digital bit. Um, I think CNCs are amazing. I
Hmm.
think they're awesome. I don't think I ever want one in my shop unless I have a twice the size shop I have and I already have a 2 car garage,
Right.
right? So I already have not enough space for all my tools, so I couldn't see putting a CNC on top of that. But I
Sure.
could see having access to a CNC. Like I think owning a boat and owning a CNC are the same thing. It's like I'd rather be friends with the person who owns a boat or friends with the person who owns a CNC.
that's, that's a good point.
Yeah,
That's a good point. Well, it's and Al will appreciate this because I know he's going to listen to this. There are times where it's like, I want a bigger CNC or I want a
right,
bigger laser. But what I've come to learn over the last 3-ish years is that I don't really need bigger than what I have. There are occasions where those bigger things would be nice to have.
right,
But as Al always says, when those occasions arrive, you know where I live, just come up. It's
right.
like
Well,
he goes, if
yeah.
you start coming up every day of the week, then maybe it's time to get your own. But you know.
So apparently, the library near my house has a laser.
Mhm.
Apparently, a very expensive, good one.
Nice.
Because they
Okay.
have like I didn't know about it until like 2020 when I started googling things to do. But then, of course, it's been closed down since then because you have to take a safety class in order to take it or use it. So I'm going to be going to that, and it's free. So I'll probably
Perfect.
be using that laser. They also have 3D
Perfect.
printers, but I have, they don't take
Yeah,
up
you're
much
good.
room.
You're good on 3D printers. Have you so since you've gotten into 3D printing, have you considered like is your ender like what you need, or have you gone, if the ender is this good, do I maybe look at a higher end model that can print a little faster, a little more consistently, with a little less fiddling, maybe some auto bed leveling, like that kind of stuff? Like, have you started to think about that kind of stuff, or are you
So
just going
I
to
have
ride this one till the wheels fall off?
I'm definitely going to do that. I have the BL Touch, so the
Okay,
leveling.
okay.
I just press the button. Because I tried it like I did the leveling by myself and it was fine, but I just found it was like I didn't like using a piece of paper. I didn't. It was like I would even if you just had like a thing that just told me a number and said
Hmm.
adjust it and then try again. Like I would rather that. This like
So would I.
dragging around a piece of paper. I'm like, how do you know my piece of paper is the same as your piece of paper? Because there's a lot of
Right.
different pieces of paper.
How
Um,
long is a piece of string, right? Like
right.
that's how that always felt to be like, put a piece of paper. Okay. Well, I use really thick paper in my printer.
Right.
So, like, what do I do? It's like, "Oh, no, a piece of standard copy." Well, okay, do you know how many different thicknesses there are for
Right.
standard, like, copy paper? So,
Right. So that's where I it was one of the I got it when I bought the thing because I knew I wasn't gonna like it, but I wanted to try the leveling before that, and I leveled it, and it was perfectly level, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of people with like the 3D printed, like it just looks like they left a print on there because it was just too close.
yeah,
That was my first like test print. It was
sure.
just way too close, and now that magnetic piece is, I still have it because it's still useful, but I didn't like the way it looked, so I went and bought another one. And then I installed the thing, and it's never happened again. I've never had them like embed into the the print bed.
I always get annoyed. I always get annoyed when people talk about anything, especially in digital fab, and they'll say something to the effect of, "Oh, you gotta get these harder to use machines or these whatever so that you learn how the machine works and you get more comfortable with it." Like, if you're gonna get a CNC, you should get an X-carve because you have to put that together from scratch. Or if you're gonna get a laser, you should get a K40 so that you can, learn how the cooling system works and how to install everything and how to keep it all running. And I think there's something to that, but I gotta be honest with you, as somebody who's had both ends of the spectrum in every class of machine, there's something to be said for the higher end stuff. There really is. Like, I understand, like, for me, right, an
Mhm.
ender would never work. When I 3D print stuff, I'm printing a lot of them at once
Right.
over
I've
the
never
course of days, right?
I don't
But
have a problem with mine though.
Well, this is the thing, right? So I've had printers on the level of the Ender
Right.
where, yeah, I'll get maybe one batch of something, and then the second batch fails, and then it's like, okay, maybe it's not level. Okay, it's not working. Okay, maybe it's not. Maybe I didn't attach this right. Okay, maybe I didn't set the temperatures right. Okay, that nothing works, and then I've gotten one batch right. The one thing, the one thing about the Prusa printers that I love, the one thing I love above everything else is that this printer is as close to an appliance
Right.
as it can ever be. I could go into that printer at any point, turn it on with the memory card in it, and just hit print, and it'll print every single time. It has never, I've lost one print, and that was because I was making pipes, and they were a quarter inch round, and I was making them 6 inches long, and I was standing them on their end,
Yeah.
and two of them fell over. I only needed six. I only needed four rather. Two of them fell over. I printed six of them. So it's like I didn't even lose the whole print. I only lost a few of them. That's the only time it's ever failed. However, if I was doing one-offs, then something like the Ender would be perfect. There's a lot of printers in that class, like the Elegoo, was it the Neptune is in that class, the Artillery Sidewinder is in that class, like all these printers that are in that class of printer now, and it's great. It's great if you're doing one-offs, like if you're making a stamp, like the stuff you do, you're not
Right.
making like I sometimes I'll make the corner jigs. I'll be printing 36 of them in a run. I'll do 36 of them because it's six and it's six runs. It takes 2 days to print them. I just let it
Right.
go.
So right
And
before Maker Camp, I made batches of the little stamps that had the Maker Camp logo and said
mm-hmm,
2022,
mm-hmm.
and they all printed perfectly. The only thing that sucks is the things that are like upgrades are like the things like on a car. It's really nice to have adaptive cruise control, right?
It
Or
sure
windshield
is.
wipers that are like automatic with the rain when it
Yes.
works, obviously, because I found they don't work that
Well,
great. But
that
whatever.
doesn't work that well. Yes, but yes,
Yeah,
point
but
taken.
if it worked really good, but it's just, so what happened with the thing is I ran out of a filament on one
mm-hmm,
of the prints halfway through, so I had like, I don't know, I think it was 16 of them
mm-hmm.
that printed 90% of the way, and I ran out of
Oh,
filament, and the ender just keeps going. It just
right.
says I'm going to keep printing. I don't know. I don't have any filament, right? But I know the Prusa has you've run out of filament
Oh yeah.
option to it. And
Yep.
so the big things I would like about the Prusa, if I would ever upgrade, is multiple colors. Um, that is a big thing that I know you can do it with an Ender, but then you got to sit there and babysit a print, and I know I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Right? I just know I'm not. I know it's just going
Fair
to sit
enough.
there and it's going to run out and it's going to do the little pause, and then 2 days later when I go back in and I go, oh, oops, and maybe it'll stick and it probably won't, but that would be the big thing. It's changing colors because there's a lot of things that like I know you can paint PLA afterwards, but it's just nice to
The
be able to
plastic
do.
being the actual color is it's really hard to beat. I did a I wanted to do that, so the first print I ever did that that was an experiment in that I wanted to try to model. It was the first time I'd ever tried to model something I saw on a TV show. So from the show Daredevil, I made the plaque that said Nelson and Murdoch from
Okay.
a picture from their office, and I
Yep.
brought it into Fusion 360 and I designed the whole thing. I traced the whole image and I extruded it, whatever, and I did it with black and gold PLA. And the first time that came out, I was just like, this is magic. Like it just feels like that. And what was cool was like that was a process because I've had 3D printers since 2016 ish, 2015.
Hmm.
Like I've had them a long time, but that was always a process. It was just kind of a pain in the ass. Usually you have to do two sets of G code and then stop when one's done. You start the second and it just continues. Now with with Prusa Slicer, you just go to this level, like right here. I want it to just put a color change right here, and it'll pause
Right.
and it'll say, "Okay, change your filament." Like,
Right.
yeah, that's exactly. But you hit it right on the head. There's a lot of, and I readily admit that I am a creature of convenience. It's the same thing with my car, right? I have a lot of stuff in my car that I will never not have a car without again. But is it critical stuff? No. I was just rear-ended really bad at the beginning of December. Like the guy probably did, I'm waiting for the body shop to give me the estimate. They should be calling any minute. Um, he probably did about $7,000 worth of damage, right? The
Right.
physical damage to the car, it's okay. Like it's not the end of the world. But you know what he did the most damage to? The lane departure sensor, the
Right.
backup sensor, the front collision detection, the adaptive cruise control. Every sensor in my terrain is just non-functional at this point. Like
So
they're
this
all
is
out of
where
whack.
only if as soon as you have one out, the whole system doesn't work. And this is
Yeah.
where I don't like these like convenience things because I don't buy new cars. So when
Hmm.
I get a car and one of these sensors doesn't work and now my park distance control doesn't work or whatever. It doesn't beep
Right.
at me. Or it just constantly beeps at me,
It
right?
constantly beeps. That's the problem I'm having now. That's exactly what it is. It just constantly beeps.
Right. And
And
you're
it'll
like, I
get
don't
fixed.
think I'm that close.
Yeah, so I got hit. I got hit hard. I got hit by a van. So if you a GMC Terrain is not terribly big.
Mhm.
And I got hit by a Sprinter at
Oh
highway
yeah.
speed on the rear end of I'm surprised he didn't do more damage, but I'm not asking to go do that again and hit me harder, believe me. But what I did notice is that is I went to Home Depot afterwards and I'm like, okay, everything's fine. Like it's not that bad. As I'm leaving Home Depot, I go to back out and my pedestrian crossing sensor, because I have one I'm in the front and in the back. If somebody's
Right.
walking past, it'll flash a
Yep.
little person on the screen. And I'm like, oh, and I look and there's nobody. Like there's
Yeah.
nobody. It's seeing something that isn't there. And I'm like, oh no, how much damage did this guy do? So I'm driving home and my terrain it also has the lane departure also has correction built in, so it'll steer you back gently. It doesn't just
Uh-oh.
jar you back onto the lane, but if you start drifting, it's going to gently guide you and start beeping at you like, hey dumbass, pay attention to the road.
Right.
Well, I was in the middle of the lane and it's starting to move me out of the lane because it can't see where the lane lines are anymore.
Oh no.
So I had to turn that off. So when I went to the body shop last week, I was like, "Hey, I just want." He goes, he looked at the damage. And went, ooh, he hit you pretty bad. I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "But that isn't even the worst of the damage." I said, "None of the safety systems are working right now." And he went, "Oh no!" Like you can almost hear him go, "Oh great, now I got to deal with the dealer."
You're like, yeah, and it's like he's a body shop. He's like, I know how to fix these. I don't want to deal with that because it's just going to be a pain in the butt. And no matter what I do, no matter what I replace,
Yep.
somehow it's not going to work.
Your
Yeah.
your quarter panel is going to be fine. Like everything's
So
going to
you
be fine with that. But oof.
right. So he's the guy who bought the Ender, put it all together, and it looks great. But the first time it stopped working, he didn't know what to do. No. So to go back to the 3D printer and your question about what would everyone I talk to, I say, if you can afford it, buy a Prusa.
Mhm.
So I say that I think it's a better printer in every single way. But I also go, and if you can't afford it, I'm doing fine with mine. But I do know a
Right.
lot of people who have had issues with theirs. I don't know, like I don't know if I'm just like lucky, which is probably the case, or if I fiddle better than other people and got it
Possibly.
working right. Like I don't know if
Sure.
I'm, I don't know what the skill is, but I've seen a lot of people have problems that are not consistent with my. Like a lot
Yeah.
of people message me and say I can't get the bed to stick at all to anything, and I'm like, I've never had a problem with sticking other than if I leave the if I don't cover it up in the winter and there's a draft going through from my furnace. But other than that, everything has been great.
Not that you're speaking from experience or
Right.
anything.
Well, like, I made the clamp trophy,
Mhm.
which was supposed to be just a clamp, but turns out that my model of my clamp was not good enough to actually clamp anything, so it turned into a trophy. But that thing was, I think, 12 inches tall,
Mhm.
uh, and it was a screw, so it was, winding around, and it did it, no problem, 12 inches.
Which you would think if something doesn't stick to a bed, that would be a perfect example of something that would just literally fall right over.
Right, exactly. That's what I did put a skirt on it because I knew it's
Of
going to be
course.
tall and I didn't want it to fall over. I don't know if it
As you
needed it.
should.
I just went there. It doesn't take very much to add this little feature. I press a check mark. Like,
Right.
I don't know.
No, I think a lot of people. I'm not one of these people. I'm more of, see, you and I are also in a different place with our making, right?
Of
Your
course.
making is for you, for content creation and for you in general. Mine
Yeah.
is more, I'm more of a production mindset. So I can't have tools that I can't just rely on to just turn something on and go. I think a
Definitely.
lot of people don't understand their place in the world. And that's not me saying like, like there are people who go, I need a Prusa. Well, okay, cool. And I don't disagree with you, right? Why do you need a Prusa? Oh, I need that reliability. Okay, how much are you planning on printing? Oh, once in a while I'll get something from Thingiverse. I'm like, dude, you don't need a Prusa. Like for
But
stuff like that, you don't. Like if you're building a print farm and you're going
ah,
to have stuff rolling, or if you have a product that you're going to be 3D printing and you need it to just go go go, and the most you do is take the bed, crack it, drop everything off, put the bed back on, hit go again, yeah, then you need a
if you can
Prusa.
afford it, you should get a Prusa. That's what I'll
Yeah,
say. If you can afford it. Now, if you're going like, I don't have any money and I really want a printer, well, then you know what? Maybe
then
this hobby isn't for you.
and that's, I hate, and you're right. That's what some, damn dude, you just said something that I've always, there's no easy way to say that, right? But that's the truth. There are some hobbies that are just too expensive for the average person. I've always wanted to rebuild a 1983 Trans Am. Okay.
Right.
I also know that if I had the space for it and I had the garage for it, I probably wouldn't even have the money to buy the parts, but I can live with it because I would
Right.
be doing most of the work myself and I would learn how to do it and it would be a great learning experience and I would love every minute of it, right? But I wouldn't get into that hobby and go, man, parts for an 83 Trans Am are really expensive. I don't know. Yeah, then this is
Yeah.
not the hobby you need to be in, bro.
Right. And a lot of people get the problem is people get into stuff not realizing how much it is. And I can understand that because like when I was rebuilding cars for fun, that you get to realize how much specialty tools you need or
Yeah,
like stuff that you just don't even realize that a garage is going to have because they need it all the time,
sure.
right? And if I look at stuff like I have software for reading the codes on my cars,
Mhm.
and I have a special BMW. I don't know how I got it, but if you say R real loud, you might understand. Uh, and if you have a wooden peg leg, and anyways, uh, so I have that software, and I can do all the stuff the dealership can do. But
Mhm.
if you were to buy that, I think it's like $50,000. It's not.
Sure.
There's
Yeah,
no reason for you to do that. But if you, there are certain things that if you want to do yourself, you need this software, and
right.
like, I
That's the barrier to entry, right? That's the barrier to entry
right,
for the hobby.
right,
It's the
and
same
that yeah.
it's
Go
the
ahead.
same with everything, right? It's the same with like jewelry making, right? Jewelry making is a very good example, right? Because jewelry making over the years, you acquire your tools. Nobody starts jewelry making with every tool that they need. It's not
Right.
possible. And what you learn as you start making stuff is like, oh, I really could use a nice set of jeweler's pliers. Like, it's not just a matter of having a set of pliers, right? They're not regular pliers. Jewelers' pliers are a very different ball game.
Hmm.
And you go, and in your mind, you're like, okay, I need these. Well, then you go and look at what they cost. And like my first good, and I don't even have a particularly good set, but it was like $70 for 5 pliers. We're talking
Right.
like that's expensive, you know. But if I looked at jewelry making and I go, well, I don't want to spend $70 on pliers. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, bro. Then, you know, yeah, you could get by without them, but there's a certain
So
reason that people are buying jewelry pliers.
you can get by without a lot of things and get around a lot of things. There's obviously times where the convenience,
Sure.
the how much better they are. Like I, if you see some of the woodworking and stuff coming out of third world countries, where you see them
It's
like
amazing, right?
right where they have like a knife and that's it, and they create like a whole
Yes.
house, and you just go like, how did you do this? You see them
Yes.
doing it, and you're just like, and you did that with your like Bowie knife somehow, right?
Just
And it's like,
just
wow, how
a
did you do it?
machete and a dream.
Right. And so you go like, it is possible. It's not the most efficient. It's not the
Right.
best. It's not the most effective. But the some of the stuff these people can do with primitive tools puts
Sure.
CNCs to shame,
Yeah.
right? But we'll go back to, is it replicatable? No.
No, it's not.
Right.
It's I do find that that's because as someone I own a lot of Ryobi tools. I own a couple of Harbor Freight tools, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm sure you probably have a couple of things in your collection from Princess. I'm sure you do, or
I
Canadian
have.
Tire.
So Princess Auto is a lot better than Harbor Freight. I will say this because I've gone
Mhm.
to Harbor Freight once, and I looked through their stuff and I just went, this is all garbage. It's like Princess Auto, but worse. I bought some clamps because I was like, oh, these clamps are really cheap. I got home and all the handles are crooked on them. So when you're screwing them, they're like, going oblong on you, and you're like, do I just throw these in the garbage? Do I just take the $3 I paid for them and flush it down the toilet? And I think
Mm.
the answer is going to be yes. I haven't made that decision yet. But anyways,
I
yes, I
I
do.
find that the higher end tools for me anyway are more about efficiency than they are
Right.
about the quality of the tool. I do find that like my drill, I have a Ryobi drill. I think it's the worst drill I've ever used in my life. I really do. And I have a DeWalt brushless drill, and I think it's the best drill I've ever used in my life. And then I got a Milwaukee M12 fuel for my apartment because my shop is a half hour away. If
Right.
I need to use a drill in my apartment, I'm not going to go up to my shop, get the
Hmm.
drill, come back and use it. I want to have some basic tools here. So I've had to double buy tools now, which
Yeah.
sucks. But I bought an M12 fuel.
Sucks. I think that's awesome.
Not when you're single, bro.
Okay. I
But
like
man, I
having
got to tell
extra
you,
tools.
I always thought like, oh, this DeWalt drill is the best drill. Like I love this drill. And now I got the Milwaukee. It's an M12. There's no reason this drill should make me as happy as it does. That drill's a monster. I love it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
damn, now it's got me thinking like, do I need to just get rid of all my tools just one by one? It's like, no, don't get rid of all your tools. But now there's another option.
Right. So when I moved out of my house and I was like in my own place for the first time and didn't have
Mhm.
access to my dad's garage, I was
Yeah.
at Canadian Tire and there was this Black and Decker like 300 tools in one drill set. And there's cordless drill, and I was like, how bad can it be? Because my dad had like one of the first cordless drills, and
Uh-huh.
it was a Makita, and it was like the batteries didn't last. Like obviously, it'd been like 20 years later. The batteries were like not very good, but this drill still drilled, right? So I got this Black and Decker, and I said, "Well, it's like brand new. How bad can it be?" You literally could drill 2 holes, and the battery would be dead.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Two like, how do they sell this as anything? I just went like, this is ridiculous. I was like, am I doing something wrong? And I worked in a hobby shop for all of high school, and I sold lithium batteries like when they hit the hobby market before they hit the consumer or market. It was a big deal because they basically took the size of the pack went from 1700 was in 2400 for a nickel metal hydrate, and then you would get into lithium and you were like 3000
Yeah.
for and it was way lighter, right? And then you were getting like 6,000 milliamp hours. So you're getting like 2 and 3 times as much, uh, you know, capacity and lighter weight. and so
Right.
lighter weight on racing. That's something you want. Or airplanes, obviously, the less you can put up, the less payload, the longer your battery is going to last. So you were getting
Sure.
everything was amazing about them, and I just went like, how am I getting? What year is this? Why is this so bad? Anyways, I don't know where I'm going with that,
I
but
I had my first cordless drill was a Craftsman. It was 16. It was a 16-volt cordless drill, and I'm not gonna lie, I got a lot of use out of it. But it was the same situation. It had a NiCad battery,
right,
and NiCad battery. It's not exactly a fun situation. First of all, they take forever to charge. Second
yeah,
of all, they don't take forever to discharge. So it's like I could be drilling anything. I could never finish anything with that drill. And the next drill I got was the DeWalt, and
right,
20 volt. It was 20? Is it 20? Yeah, it's 20-volt cordless, brushless. The thing, it's just a whole other planet of drill. And I'm using it and I'm like, "Oh my god, so this was the dream when they made the one that I had. Like, this is what they expected people to be doing with these." But, it's funny you say, like, how bad could it be? And I've asked that question on numerous occasions. And man, don't ever ask that question, because as bad
right.
as you think it could be, I promise whatever it is, it's 100 times worse.
Okay, so then thinking about that and thinking about the different digitally available tools, I think the Ender isn't the lowest end. There's
It's
lower
definitely
end.
not. It's
So I
100% not.
never buy the lowest end of something. That's what I'll
True.
say. Buy the
That's
medium or higher. Don't the lowest end is the lowest end for a reason. If you want to have headaches, if you want something that doesn't work, go there. You want something medium, you might have some headaches, but it might work. Go there. You want something that works every time, you buy the Milwaukee, you buy the Festool, you buy the
Yeah.
Prusa.
Yeah. I think people have to give themselves permission to do those things. That's one thing. And I think the other thing is you have to understand that, okay, so in my shop is a really good example, right? I have DeWalt tools, but I have a lot of Ryobi tools. And I have a $5,000 laser and a $3,000 CNC,
Right.
but then I also have, a $200 Cricut. Like I don't need a $500 vinyl cutter. The
Right.
$200 Cricut's good enough for me. Like, I don't need the only reason I got the Glowforge at that price is because that's what the price was when I bought it. Otherwise, I
Right.
probably like I would buy an Ohm Tech now for $3,000 and probably get more out of it than I can get out of the Glowforge, right? But the
Well,
point being, you don't have to have the high end of every tool that you own either.
very
Your
true.
tools that you use the most are probably the ones that you need to upgrade the most. Like contractor saws. Like, a lot of people rip on contractor saws, rightly so. Most of them are trash. The one nice thing about DeWalt contractor saws, and at least with mine has been proof of this since I got it in 2017. The fence on this thing is dead on accurate. I never need to think about it. And the rack and pinion system of it moving back and forth means that it stays square all the time. I'm not cutting trapezoids when I cut with it, right? But
Right.
that saw, when I bought it, was way out of my price range. It was $650.
Hmm.
I was I wanted a table saw so bad that I was going to go buy the Ryobi one that they sell at Home Depot, which is basically there's no metal on the whole thing. It's like an aluminum top and I don't even it feels like the material they used to make masks for Halloween costumes out of as the base. Like, it just wobbled and everything, and Beth looked at it and she goes, "You're not allowed to buy this."
Right.
And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You're not putting this in our basement." She goes, "This thing looks like a death trap." She goes, I'm telling you, spend the money, get a better saw." I was
Right.
like, "Okay." And did I buy the best contractor saw I could buy? Probably. It probably at the time was the best contractor saw I could buy that could take a dado stack. So I spent $650 on a table saw. But you know what? I'm still using the same table saw to
Right.
this day. I'll probably keep using it until it drops dead, and then I'll figure out what I'm doing with my life. But,
So
you
I've
know,
used three of them, and two of the times I used them, three different brands. One was
mhm,
Mastercraft, which is the Canadian Tire brand,
mhm.
and the people who assembled it wrong. Like it was just left. So my buddy was like getting his house renovated, and they
Right.
had it set up in his basement, and they were using it, and they had assembled it and put the like this the what do you call the thing? It's the stand
Mhm.
backwards. So we actually ended up fixing it for them. They said it sucked, and I was like, "Yeah, it sucked." Every time you touched it, it wanted to fall over. Well, because it had like a stand that was designed so that it would, if you
It looks
pushed on
it
it,
with the center of gravity of the saw, it's gonna stay level, but if you put it backwards, it's now always wanting to tip. Okay, that makes
right.
perfect sense.
So they thought it was shitty. It was still shitty, even with it turned around. It still felt like it just didn't have
Right.
the weight to it. And then I used another one, and it was the scariest time I've ever used a table saw. And then I used my buddy went out and bought the rigid one, and it's okay.
Mhm.
It's loud though. That's the biggest
Yes.
thing I found. They're so much louder than the other saws. I don't know
Sure,
why.
because 'cause they're not really contained. They're not really enclosed the way, like, a hybrid saw or a cabinet saw is. Like, there's nothing the motor is usually out in the open, and then
My
the only
motor's
thing.
hanging out the back.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, I
But
think it's just I think the difference is the type of motor. Because
that's
there's
true too.
they use brushed or brushless depending on the saw motors, whereas the old ones use the they're like the 1750 or 3450 RPM motors, which
Mhm.
they're inductive.
Yep.
I don't know exactly how they work. All I know is that they work slightly differently than a brushed motor. And brushed motors are louder. I don't know.
All good.
Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that. Again, tangent onto nothing.
Tangents, listen, tangents are why friends do podcasts together. They're just
Right.
one long string of tangents strung together to call it an episode. So I'm always
Definitely.
interested. I'm always interested in like so now that you've dipped your toe into digital fab with a 3D printer and you
Hmm.
seem to be really enjoying it. Are there other 3D are there other digital fab things where you'll either have access to through various other ways or whatever, but are there any other things where it's like, given space, assuming all conditions are optimal, would a laser or a small CNC, like, does any of that stuff does has this increased your interest in the other stuff a little more or no?
So I was recently given a metal mill that's
Ooh.
CNC. So I it can be obviously operated manually, but it has been
Mhm.
converted to CNC. So now I have a mill that I could do. Basically, I could put wood on it. There's not really a
Sure.
difference between it and a thing other than the way that it doesn't move the gantry around. Instead, the plate moves around, and you
Right.
just secure the work down there. So I could use it as a wood mill or a metal. But 3 years ago when we last talked, I probably would have told the guy no, right? Like, I just would have said, thanks, but I don't know if I don't want to sit there and program something, because the last time I had done any programming was in school in the early 2000s in engineering school when I used AutoCAD. And, I took a class in AutoCAD, and I just remember being like bored and
Mhm.
not really enjoying it. Um,
Right.
but since then, I took the I like to make stuff fusion course,
Which is
Fusion for
excellent.
Makers. Yeah, and it really, because I got the 3D printer and I was like, I don't want to just print like tchotchkes off Thingiverse. Like that's not what I got it for. Like, yeah, that's fun. I made a whole bunch of track for my son for
Mhm.
Hot Wheels and stuff. Like, that's great. But then I was like, I don't really like how this one is. I want to modify it. Well, now I need to you learn Fusion because it's completely different. Anyways, I took that course, and I realized, like, from that it has changed a lot since 2004 when I took the
Sure.
course. 20 years somehow changed how much more user friendly 3D modeling has gotten.
It really
Um,
did. It really
yeah,
did. That's a
it's
really
weird, eh?
good point. Yeah.
So now I don't think it's not as it's nice that I can sometimes, like, if it's really cold out or I just don't feel like going out in the garage, but I want to do some making, I can do making in my house, setting up my
Mm.
computer and just 3D model if I feel like that's the thing that I want to do that day.
Sure.
Um, so I don't know. I can't remember what your question was, but I hope that answered
So
it.
is your interest peaked in other stuff now beyond 3D printing? Like, would you consider, I mean, you kind of said that you do technically have a CNC now, but like, is
Yeah.
this, is there more? Because I know you've always been, in my eyes anyway, you've always been more of the traditional, like, go down and like I'm a woodworker, or even like I'm a dig my head into a motor for a couple hours and play with tinker with a car kind of guy. I never took you as a digital fab guy. And the more I see you using the 3D printer, I'm like, yes, we got our claws in him.
Yeah, it's I've always had this throughout my life. I've always had this like push and pull between the two things. So
Hmm.
in high school, I took all of the woodworking, auto mechanic shops, but I also took all the computer programming, right? And like half the people I knew when they found out I was going to school for computer engineering were like, "Oh, I thought you were going to become like a mechanic or something. I thought you were going to work with your hands." And the other half were like, "Yeah, that makes sense, right?" Like, so it was like a toss up between how you knew me on
Right.
what it was. So I think that's what I like about all this stuff is because they allow you to do things that you couldn't do otherwise. Oftentimes, like I don't know. I was listening to Making Problems to Solve, and the latest guest, I can't recall his name, uh, was talking about this and how he was so anti CNC. Like he was a like woodworker. Woodworking is woodworking, and anti CNC. And then he realized CNC just like it's not. It doesn't take away. It adds to it.
It's just
And
another tool.
I think the big problem is it's just another tool. And I think the problem comes about is that it's when people see it as you know you're batching out products and they're not good quality. And I think that's
Right.
the problem is people see this as like the quality is going to go down, but the quality is not going to go down. The quality is of the person making, not not the tool that's making it,
Right.
right? And you were talking the other day, the wedding signs that flopped over, right?
Yes. Yes.
It,
Yes.
that is the quality of the person making it, not the
Right.
quality of the tool that made it.
Right, because I'm not using anything. I'm using a laser just like she was. I'm using acrylic just like she was. I'm just more meticulous about my standards when I ship them to a customer. Like that
Exactly.
that's yeah, see that's a lot of and the reason people think that, mass produced equals crap is because that's kind of what they've gotten in the habit. Even and I'll give you an even more granular example, right? Like what you said is 100% true. People think, CNC mass produced equals crap. Quality goes down because it's being mass produced, right? People think the same thing about IKEA. What they don't realize is that when you go to IKEA actually has different tiers of products as well.
I know.
This is the funny part about IKEA. Like, yes, IKEA does have complete and total garbage that will fall apart in a year. They 100% do.
Yep.
There's no arguing that. But I also have IKEA stuff. My dresser is IKEA. My TV stand is IKEA. You couldn't break this if you wanted to. Like, it's moved 3 times. It's
Right.
still in one piece. My dresser has moved twice, is still in one piece.
Right.
These are they do make quality things as well, but people don't know that because the overarching connotation is that IKEA is put it together and it's garbage and you throw it away
Right.
when you're done with it. Even
I
though some of the stuff there's like, oh no, that's really not like the bed I have. I bought it from IKEA when I got this apartment. That bed, that's going to be a mother to get rid of because it is made well. Like it is
I
made really well. It just that's the thing, right? People don't understand that yes, there are variations of quality within a product line within the same company. There's
right.
Harbor Freight's a very good example.
Of
Like
course.
they recently they've been really pushing new models in their same product line. So the Bauer tools that were all just like, who the hell wants Bauer? But now the Bauer tools are actually people are even saying like these are really good now. Like I watched on YouTube, I watch Torque Test channel because I just find it fun to watch tools get beat up.
Okay.
And they'll put the Bauer impact drivers on a dyno, and they're hanging with high end tools, and it's like, if you're a weekend warrior, you don't need Matco or Hilti. You can get an impact driver from Harbor Freight and just be your weekend warrior guy and just use that stuff.
Totally. So we
It.
have on the race team, we have a Snap-on
Mhm.
impact driver, and we have Milwaukee,
Mhm.
and we have a DeWalt, and I also have a Mastercraft. And guess what? Every single one of them takes off the wheels the same way,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? The Snap-on one couldn't do the crank bolt, but the Milwaukee could, and the DeWalt couldn't either. But that's you know,
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting.
So,
That's that stuff's
and the
interesting to me.
Snap-on's crazy expensive.
Sure.
It was stupidly expensive, and we basically gotten away from Snap-on because the Milwaukee stuff was doing better, and they're smaller, and it's just like,
Smaller, cheaper, and more available too. Like, let's be
well,
honest.
and the tool range was better for having. So at the track, you don't want to have 15 different batteries. In the shop, I think it's silly that when people are like, I've committed to a battery system and now I have 300 batteries. I'm like, yeah, you have 300 batteries. But at the track, I don't want 300 batteries. I want
Right.
two,
Right,
right? I
right,
have
right.
limited supplies. I have a small toolbox that I have to roll around with me. I don't want to carry around 300 different batteries,
Of
right?
course.
But so I guess what I'm trying to say is the tool lines that are available, it makes more sense. There's a drill, there's a driver, there's an
Sure.
impact, there's a reciprocating saw, all that, and I only need to bring in two batteries.
It was very funny because when I first started woodworking, my first two tools were my DeWalt drill and my DeWalt impact driver. Those were my first
Right.
two. So now, of course, I've already started out in the DeWalt ecosystem. It's funny you say this because this exactly was my thought process. So I have these two tools, and I'm like, the next thing I wanted. I had the rigid, the cordless trim router, the corded trim router that every single one of us has. We all have this router. Every single woodworking shop across the maker sphere has this router. And I have this router. I'm like, but I really, because my shop was a basement, right? So the only
Hmm.
power outlets were up against the walls. I'm like, man, it would be really, really nice to have a cordless router because I
Right.
use the router all the time. It would be nice. And I looked, I'm like, well, Rigid didn't have one at the time. DeWalt's was 300 and something dollars. I'm like, yeah, I'm not buying that. Ryobi had one for $80.
Right.
But I then had to buy a Ryobi battery and charger. And I'm sitting there going, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to do this. And I had to really talk myself into having two battery systems because I thought I was like, no, stick to one. Otherwise, you're wasting your money. What difference is it? And I had the same conversation you had
Right.
just now. It was like, no, in my shop, who cares? Just put two chargers on the wall instead of one and put all the batteries there. Now I have multiple battery systems. Who cares? I want the tool. I don't care who makes it. If you have a
Right.
battery, fine. Then I at least know that that battery goes to that tool. All right. I got to be more meticulous about keeping it on the charger. That's all.
Right. And as soon as you have two batteries for something, then you're good to go. Right.
Yes. Yes.
Like I recently got the Greenworks snowblower, and I got
Oof.
the 80
Yeah.
volt version. I had got the 40-volt version first, but and I'll say it here, and they're probably not going to listen. I don't get it. Don't get the 40-volt version. It's
No,
too
no.
small. It's not good. Like if you live in like Virginia and it snows twice a year, you're good to go.
I
But
couldn't even get by with a 40-volt lawnmower, let alone a
uh,
40-volt snowblower. Like that doesn't make sense.
oh, I've got the 40-volt. That's why I got it, because I had This is the thing. They convinced me to go with the 40-volt because I've got the 40-volt lawnmower, the 40-volt chainsaw, the 40-volt hedge trimmer, the 40-volt. I got
Okay.
all the 40-volt stuff. So they said, "Well, go with the 40-volt." And I was like, "Sure, it's free. Um, great, I'll go with the 40-volt." It sucked. They sent me the 80-volt, and I'm like, I don't really care. It's going to be sitting there. It's going to be a battery that gets used with that thing only.
Mhm.
I'm good to go. It was
Fine.
so much better. Anyway. Get the one that makes sense for the job you're doing. Don't worry about the battery.
I think that's the overarching point of this entire conversation that we've had is get the tool that fits your need, right?
Right.
Like for me, I've outgrown the Glowforge, not because of the software, not because of the web connectivity, all the stuff that everyone thinks you're going to outgrow. It just isn't big enough. Like
Right.
that's where I'm hitting the wall now. It's not in the software. I've never had an internet issue with it. Like I know people are like, oh, if the Wi-Fi goes down, it stops working. Oh my god. Listen, I've had the damn thing December 24th. It's 4 years old. Okay. If I was going to have a problem with this thing, it's the most used piece of digital fabrication equipment that I have. It gets used on almost every project.
Right.
If I was going to have a problem with it, I would have had that problem with it already, right? Where I'm bumping into it is the size. I need to make bigger things than this is capable of making. So, okay, now I know. The next one will not be this size. It's going to be a bigger laser.
Right.
But
Do you have
yes, you are
the pro or the
I have
regular?
I have the regular. I have
Ah,
the plus. I have the mid tier one.
okay.
Um, the pro wouldn't work for me anyway because the pass through slot is only 3 millimeter. So
Oh,
you can't fit like a 2x4 through it. So it's kind of pointless for me. But
hmm.
yeah, that would
I
be
don't.
I mean, that would be a perfect solution if the pass-through slot was higher. I would absolutely get the Glowforge Pro, and that would be my next laser.
Hmm.
But
I
yeah,
all I
it's
know is I've seen people who modify their stuff, like, so
yeah,
that you don't have to worry about.
I'm not modifying it in its 4th year because the laser tube only lasts about 5, but you are 100% correct.
I'll say this. You know what? For you, you're not a modifier. You're not the guy who's
I'm
going to
not.
take it
You're
and cut it
right.
apart. But like Dean Duplantis, yeah, that's the type of thing he would do. He's got the Glowforge. I've seen he's done modifications to it. He's
Sure.
cut out the bottom of it, right?
Yep.
He's done stuff that I know you're not. That's not you. You would
It's not
go,
me.
no, I'm good. I'm not. I don't want that. I want the tool to do the work. I don't want to do the work on the tool. And I think
Yeah.
everyone has their own thing,
I honestly I have a lot of respect for tinkerers that do stuff like that. I really do. And we were talking about 3D printers earlier. I have a lot of respect for people who sit there and they fine tune their benchy to the point where you can't see layer lines anymore and everything's perfect. And it's like, yeah, I did this on a $200 printer, and I'm like, good for you, bro. Like
right?
I'm not gonna lie, that impresses me. I'm not even just being facetious or placating people. It really does impress me when people are able to get great results out of cheap equipment. Always has. I think it's a miracle when somebody can do fine woodworking with a Ryobi table saw. Like
Right.
I think it's pure magic to me, and I'm impressed and I'm happy for you. That's not me. That's not me.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
live that life. I need as close to a black box of productivity as I can get.
Totally. It's all about why you're going out there and
Sure.
what your goal is. And if your
Sure.
goal is to make money, you need good
Yes.
tools. If your goal
Yes.
is to have fun and tinker and do whatever, like, cuz that's what mine is. That's what I just
Right.
want to go out there, like, that's why I keep buying different tools. Like, I just got a forge. I don't know. I'm not going to become a blacksmith, but it's
But yeah,
fun to heat some metal up sometimes, and sometimes you just need that, like, oh, if I had a forge I could just make this little hook at the end of this thing, right? Like, but I know I'm not going to become a blacksmith. I'm not going to become a woodworker. I'm not going to
sure.
become a machinist because I have some machinist tools. Like, I, as soon as you get a tool, you go, if I had five more tools, right, then I could do this thing I want to do. And as soon as you get those other five tools, you'll find five more you need,
Of course. I
right?
just, it's funny. It's wow. This conversation's super timely because I haven't told anyone this, but I just sold all my rug tufting stuff. Most
Oh
of it's
yeah,
never been used.
I
I
believe it.
bought the stuff. I bought the stuff in 2020. I bought it, or 2021. Might have been 2021. Either way, I bought it a long time ago. It's all
Yeah,
still in the box. And my friend, she goes, "Which stuff did you buy? Because I want to get into rug tufting." I said, "I'm gonna make you a deal. You're gonna love this." I said,
yeah,
"How about I sell you everything that I have at what I paid for it? I'm not even asking for a dime more. I just want to make back my money on it. I have the gun. I have the stand. I have extra monk's cloth. I have the sheep shearer. I have the projector. I will sell you all of it just for what I paid for it. You just
right,
take it off my hands." And she goes, "When I get home after the holidays, I will take it all from you." It's like, okay,
right,
perfect. And what did I have to do? I had to have the conversation with myself, the one you just said. I had to have that conversation with myself. I was like, I'm never going to do this. Like when
right.
I got the stuff, I was fully committed to doing it. And I was. I was very much into the idea of making rugs and doing that. The more I think about it, the more it's like, that's just not a thing I have time for. And
You know what? I would think for rug tufting or some of these things, instead of going out, and I have this problem too, I just keep buying stuff, is go take a class. A
well,
rug tufting class would be amazing. And at the end, you have a rug and you go, I loved it. And now, like, that's all I can think about. Then you go and buy it. If you don't love it, like, you took a blacksmithing class, you didn't like it,
right,
right?
right.
Great. I did some blacksmithing. I enjoyed it. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
bought got the forge,
Mm-hmm.
got the anvil. Everything's going to get going.
Sure.
That's the, I think that makes a lot more sense than going out and buying this
I,
these things.
I loved it enough when I got to try Keith's at Jimmy's
Right.
at for the second ever Jimmy Speedway event. So
Hmm.
Keith brought all his stuff. Keith Decent brought all his stuff, and I got to try it, and I thought it was super fun. And I was like, okay, I'm in. I want to do this more. I had every intention of doing it more, like I really did. And realistically, what ends up happening is all your intentions for all the things you want to do and all the things you want to learn and all the stuff you want to get better at, they do have to sometimes take a backseat to things like life and
Hmm.
family and, drama. And, life drama happens. You never know. You never know when you may get cancer or go through a divorce. You don't know, right? Like all these things, they don't just, they're not always there, but they do sometimes just happen, right?
Yep.
For me, it was just there was just too much going on. And it's like even as I was moving the stuff here to this apartment, I have it in a closet, and I'm looking at it one day, and I'm going, "You're never going to do this." Like I'm literally sitting there going, "Why are you keeping this stuff?" And now it's gotten to a point where I'm like, I want to go through everything in my apartment and go, do you really need this? If the answer is no, then get rid of it. Like I'm
Well,
finally in the mindset of get rid of shit instead of keeping it for the day where it's going to be useful or interesting to me.
that's why you have a Knight Rider plastic model kit.
That is a I will never part with that, by the way.
But
Never
well, no,
in a
because
million.
I had it, and I
Right.
have probably 40, 50 plastic models that are brand new. All they've
Mhm.
ever been done is opened and looked at, right? Because like I had like a little, I worked at a hobby shop. I enjoyed making plastic models. I made a couple dozen of them,
Sure.
but I enjoyed buying them and looking at them and seeing how they were all going to be put together and reading the instructions. But the time it takes to build one, it
It's
takes time.
enormous. It's
And it takes like
enormous.
you got to have something set up for a while if you want to do it, slightly efficiently, or you're
Yeah,
constantly putting it away, and then as soon as you put something away,
you've
it
put it
it's
away.
it's a barrier to getting it. It has like it's a you need twice as much energy to get to going on it again.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that. That's why I haven't started the model yet, because I know I don't have a clear string of days or whatever, because I know it would take me about a week
Yeah,
realistically to paint it and put it all together, right?
right.
I kind of know because I've done them before too. I love doing them. I was When you sent that to me, I was so happy. I was looking at it, like it's such a I opened it. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but I opened it the week before Thanksgiving. I opened it because I was showing it to somebody,
Oh
and
yeah,
I was looking at the parts in it, and I was like, "This is a really nice model." Like it's a really detailed model. And I'm like, that's really cool that it's detailed. And then I'm thinking about it, going, that just means I got to spend a lot of time on it because it's like everything is so detailed. And of course, you know me with Knight Rider. And I think everyone that listens knows me with Knight Rider.
right.
I'm not gonna half-ass a Knight Rider anything. Like it's gotta get the full Monty. Like I have to put my heart and soul into it and really. So it's like that alone, that's another barrier, right? Because I don't want to do it if I can't throw myself into it and just get fully involved in it. So
So I have a 1985 Pontiac Fiero GT, and I
ooh.
have like it's pretty hard to see on the camera, but I
Do you
have
have the
put
brake
a
shoes painted?
yes.
Wow. Yeah, it's hard to see
I
because Zencaster goes 8-bit mode when you're oh wow.
oh,
Looks so
so
good.
I did a V8 swap. So if anyone knows Pontiac Fieros, they came with a six-cylinder
Uh-huh.
motor or a four-cylinder. The one that I owned as a kid when I was 16 had a four-cylinder, and I always thought of doing a V8 swap. So I did a V8 swap. I've got like seat belts in the like racing seats with actual seat belts.
So cool.
Yeah, so I've done like above and beyond on this, and yeah, for custom steering wheel because I had a custom steering wheel on my Fiero. Like I did everything above and beyond. And
Mhm.
when I think about that, and I think about you know, like this is one of the last models I ever made because I get into like I have to one up myself and one up myself and one up myself and make it
Yeah.
better and make it better. And now
Yeah.
I got a 3D printer, and I know like a lot of these little things that I made I could have just printed out on a 3D printer. More likely, if I had a resin one, they'd be better. But it's the fun parts of you know getting to do something like this is fun, but uh, it takes time.
Yeah.
And in the end, I have this. And what do I do with this? And I have so many more things in my life. Like this is like if I made a rug, okay, I'd have a rug at the end. Great. I already have rugs. I don't
Right.
need another rug. Sure, would I love a rug that like had my logo? Yeah, that would be really cool. But I don't have the like time to do that. So I don't know
Sure.
where I all that to say is it's your priorities that you need to figure out. And I think
Yeah.
something like uh, building a model. is a great thing because there is nothing at the end of it.
Hmm.
At the end of it, you have a display piece, but you have no there's no reason to do it other than enjoyment. And I think a lot of people don't realize that's what a hobby is supposed to be. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people take their hobbies and turn them into businesses, which is great, and then they're no longer they're no longer a hobby. They're a hobby business, which is great. And if you're having fun, that's great. But they can easily go down that little rabbit hole into all of a sudden it's not fun anymore.
Damn. I think was it you? I think it was you actually that said that people are always in a rush to try to figure out how to make money off doing something they love. They
Yeah,
can't just they're not content to just leave something as a hobby, even though that might be the better place for it to live as a hobby. Damn,
yeah.
dude.
If I didn't say that, I'll take credit for it because
You
it's
can take
definitely
credit for
something
it.
I could.
I'm almost positive it was you. I don't remember where you said it, but I'm almost positive it was you that said it because I remember where I heard it because I have really good memory for that, like locational memory. Like I'll remember hearing something on a podcast, and I know I heard that in the car. I know I was driving to the grocery store, and I know what
Right.
street I was on when I heard it. I just can't remember who said it, but I'm pretty sure it was you. So we're
All
gonna
right.
go with you. So Grant, you are a damn genius, my friend.
I guess I'm just dropping more truth bombs.
Grant is just the king of truth bombs, and
Apparently.
everyone knows where that reference comes from. And if you don't, you're listening to the wrong podcasts in your life. Why don't we shift gears a little bit and do some things of the week? So,
All right.
Grant, my friend, what would be your thing of the week? I think this is your third appearance on this show, actually.
I think it's only second. Maybe
Is
it's
it?
third.
No, you guest co-hosted once too. You were a guest co-host once. So you were on
Hmm.
with Ethan. And then
Yeah.
you were my stand-in co-host on an episode. I'm almost positive you were stand-in co-host at least once. So
I thought that was Keith, but maybe I did.
no, Keith did too. But I had a lot of stand-in co-hosts over the years. If wink,
You
wink.
know what? Yeah, I did. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Now that you think about it, and I think there's been a lot of podcasts. So, anyways,
Wait. So
this is
now,
this,
wait. So I've been a guest twice on yours. You've been a guest twice on mine.
yep.
So we have to break the tie now. Anyway, what's your thing of the week?
So my thing of the week, I'm going to recommend everyone check out Andrew Zito. He's building this whimsical cabin. It's going to be a sauna, so he's got the whole sauna on the inside. But I really like the shape of it and some of the fun things he's doing. Like he made one of the siding. He did the entire siding in skateboard ends, so the little like flip up part on the skateboard. And I really love how it turned out, and it looks amazing. So everyone should go check it out. Andrew's just a really good dude who puts out great videos.
His videos are so beautifully made. Like they
Yeah,
really are. Like it's not just the content. He's really good at shooting videos. Like artistically, he's just a really talented dude.
yeah.
Um,
Well, that's his like actual full time job is video creation, or at least it was. So
Gotcha. I'm not going to even pretend. I'm not going to be like some hipster, like, oh yeah, I know very little about Andrew, but I will say that I did have the privilege of meeting him at Maker Camp this year, and it was
yeah,
very cool. Like as we were looking at the jackalope, and me, him, and Morley were just and Jacob Griffin from Griffin
hmm,
Makes. We were all just kind of just hanging out and just chatting and stuff. Like he's a really cool guy. So yeah, that's a good one. I'll have a link to the playlist for this particular project. We should definitely check out the whole channel. Andrew Zito, Zeto. That's a good one. That's a
yeah.
very good one, especially for if nothing else, it's a course in how to make YouTube videos because the guy is super talented. So
Right. Well, even just framing. Like, so he's got an Airstream on his property and he constantly has it in the background. I'm like, I have this beautiful, like, bowler that I redid and it's never in my, it's never in the background of my videos. I'm like, oh, I should just be like thinking about that stuff way more.
promote.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. That's a very good one. My thing of the week is a movie, and my thing of the week is never a movie. I don't think I've made a movie my thing of the week ever since starting to do thing of the week on
Mhm.
this podcast. So, in 3 years of this podcast, I've never picked a movie, but last night watched a movie that was just so damn good. It was on going through the watch list, my date last night was like, oh, there's a movie I want to see. And I'm like, well, it's already in my watch list. So I guess it's a movie I want to see. So we watched it and I put it on, and it's called The Black Phone. It's Ethan Hawke is in it. It is an absolutely fan freaking tastic movie. Like, I would rate it a 9 out of 10. That's how much I loved it. It's just there's nothing about that movie I didn't love. It starts out with the very, very first scene of the movie. Like, it's a baseball game happening, and then the next bit of the movie is the kid who is at bat gets kidnapped.
Hmm.
Like, it happens, like, right off the bat, and then the movie just develops from there, and you never really it takes a while to understand what's actually going on, but the movie just gets more wild and crazy, and by the end of it, you're just like, "Holy crap, this is incredible." Like, it's just this crazy. I don't wanna I keep using generic terms because I don't wanna give away, because there's so many things that when they hit you, it's like, "Oh, that's what's happening? Oh my god, oh my god." There's so many OMG moments in this movie, but it's so good. It's on Amazon Prime right now, and it is 100% free to watch, which means you don't have to pay a single dime, and you can be entertained for an hour and 45 minutes, but
Okay.
truly a great movie. It's The Black Phone, Ethan Hawke, Amazon Prime. Go watch it. I promise you, you're not going to not like it. It was four thumbs up in this apartment last night. So,
And for anyone wondering, it's only going to be on Amazon Prime for 10 months. Then it's going to go on Peacock for 4 months, and then it's going to be gone.
wow.
This is something new they're starting on movies because there's so much content out there
Yeah.
that they're not putting it anywhere.
Wow.
So they're
Wow.
giving these like it's limited availability to try and make it hype it up and actually get the views when they're happening.
It's worth it. You know what?
Yeah.
Normally I wouldn't fall in for that kind of thing, but I heard people talking about this movie for a little while, and I was like, I'll just put it in the watch list. I'll get to it eventually. And then when she saw it last night, she's like, "Oh, yeah, there's one we could watch." And I'm like, "Oh, you want to see it too? All right, cool. So since we both want to see it, like that's a perfect makes the discussion of what are we going to watch so much easier." So excellent movie, and see it before it's gone. You only have probably about 8 months at this point.
No, it just went on Amazon Prime 3 days ago.
Oh, it's only on there three. Oh, perfect,
Yeah,
perfect.
this is perfect timing. Just
Wow.
there. It's
Okay.
gonna be
Now, as we
you
record this, it is December 30th. So
all right.
this is going to go out. Hold on. I just have to look. This goes out January 4th. So it's a little bit older than that, but you still have plenty of time. Go watch the movie. Just go watch the movie. You know what else you should do? You should support this podcast financially.
All right.
We have a bunch of those people, and those people are Matthew Serio of Artigiano Serio, Big Al Schultz of New York Woodworks, Tori Decker of Tori Did It, Ed Swanson of Ed's Clocks and More, Jake Drews of Make with Jake, Megan Chris from Onyx Designs Woodwork, Christian Neary of Warren Works, Jeff Stein, aka A Weird Guy, Kim and Garrett of Kim and Garrett Make It, Rory Langefeld of RLL Woodworks and DIY, Robert J. Keller, Rebecca Cole of Beck C Designs, Brian Arsenault, the Seven Hills Maker, Lars Coleman of Colorado Multicraft, Dave Bauer of Dave Bauer Art, Jeremy Spees, Mike from Pixels to Prototype, Donald LeBlanc of Fun with Woodworking, and the one and only Grant Alexander from the Clamp podcast. See, this is how you
Who,
get on the
me?
show. I always joke about it, but this is how you get on the show. Support this show, and I'll get you to be a guest. But
Makes sense.
seriously, I appreciate the financial support from everybody that does it. If you can't support the show financially, I completely understand. Times are tough, inflation is high, but you know it's free? Sharing the show and leaving a review. And both of those things help almost as much as the financial support. And I appreciate it all just as much. So thank you for helping me make this a successful comeback. I mean, I know that you're listening to this in the new year. We're recording this on the second to last day of 2022, but it has been a wild 2022 for me. And it's also been kind of a miracle to bring this podcast back from the dead. And I couldn't do it without the financial support of the fine people I just mentioned. And I really, really appreciate all of it. Grant, my friend,
Yes.
it has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, you too.
It's I always like episodes where I have a friend on, because it's like you just talk about anything. Like, I just completely throw any structure, aim, goal, any of that just kind of out the window, because I like to just when I have friends on, it's like, nah, this is a friend conversation. You want more structure? Wait till I have guests that I don't know as well.
Yeah,
But
and I really enjoy the I enjoy both those types of episodes, but I feel like your personality comes out a lot more when you're listening to the friend episodes.
sure,
And
sure,
if obviously, because the other ones feel a little bit more
formal.
like
They're a
well,
little more
you're
formal.
pulling instead of
Yeah.
pushing and pulling, and I don't know.
No, it's just. Well, I mean, you and I have been friends for like 3 years at this point. 2 years, three
Yeah,
years. Yeah.
yeah,
So, you get to know someone in all that time, and I'm really happy. And I know we didn't talk about it that much, but I'm really happy seeing the growth of Clamp.
oh, thank you.
I'm
Yes,
very happy to see things still rolling along, even though it's just you and Adam for now.
yeah,
And I'm really happy that you know
see,
morally moving on didn't put an end to the podcast. I'm very glad that you guys kept it going, and I'm glad that
yeah,
there's no intent to let it go anytime soon. So I'm very happy to see that.
yeah. I'm happy to see it too. I'm excited for 2023, and there will be a third host coming on
Hmm.
in 2023. So anyone who wants to listen to that, it'll be fun. You can catch up on all the old episodes. We're currently on holiday break, but when this releases, we might have our first one of 2023 recorded by then, and hopefully with a new co-host. So
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And just for those of you watching the video version of this show, which as I said earlier, you should because it makes a much more interesting visual podcast than it does an audio podcast. Over Grant's shoulder, above the interstate batteries sign, is
yes,
his I believe you were second place in the Enlighten Us challenge with that. I think you won second place with that.
and I think the chomp light might have won first. I don't know.
Bernie
I
won
think it
for
was
Bernie won
or Bernie.
first.
Yes,
Bernie won first. I think you won. I can't remember which. Or I know Jeff is going to know because he will. He
I think you instead of going first, second, and third, I think you did different categories.
Fair enough. I don't even remember. But anyway, on his wall, if you want to see what it actually looks like, is Grant's. It won something
Yes.
with the
Most
Enlighten Us
creative, I
challenge.
believe. If you go back and listen to the episode, I think it was most creative.
And I think it's sad. I think I might have to look. I think I accidentally deleted the video from my YouTube channel, but maybe I'll have to
Oh
go
no.
find that. And maybe I'll cut the clip in of it being unveiled. But yeah, Grant took a
Yeah.
bumper, a front end of a BMW, and made it into a lamp, which is like the most blasphemous thing you could do to a BMW fan, but it's wonderful. So
Well, I'm the BMW fan, so
true, fair
it's the
enough, fair enough. You are a BMW fan. We'll go there.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
where can people find you if they want to keep up with you and see what you're up to and what you're doing?
the best place to find me if you want to have a conversation is Instagram. If you want to watch some long form videos, you can head over to YouTube. I'm also on the TikTokies and Facebook Reels and all those other fun places. So you can, depending on what you listen to, you can find me there just by searching for the Grant Alexander. And if you find one with an orange logo, that'll be me. And you can also find me on the aforementioned Clamp podcast just by searching for Clamp, and you find that on your favorite podcatcher.
Sweet, sweet, and you should definitely go listen to them. I mean, you guys started that podcast about a month after Because We Make started, if my calculations were correct.
I think we started it on the in 2020, right after COVID. Like, so I remember
Real?
trying to
Wait, you
order.
started it in 2020?
Yeah, I
Oh
remember
wow, so you're
trying
like a year
to.
after us then.
Yeah, but our numbers aligned because you took a couple of hiatuses, and
Fair enough. Yeah.
we this is the first time we've missed more than a week in the entire two plus
Well, I don't
two
even I don't
plus
even
years.
number them. I don't even number them anymore. It's funny. Apple actually tells you in the podcast guidelines do not put episode numbers in your titles, and they will. I think they downrank you in search results for doing it. And I
Why?
might be seeing a bit of a boost in search result people finding me by taking the episode numbers out. They do tell you that, like in the podcast guidebook that you get when you sign up for Apple Podcasts,
Hmm,
they tell you don't put episode numbers in your titles. Who knew?
weird.
Yeah,
I
it's
wonder
it
why.
'Cause they want control over everything. It's really funny because it's gonna get to a point soon where most of my traffic is on Spotify and YouTube anyway, and I just won't care anymore, but
So what we've actually done on Clamp is we moved the episode number to the end.
Mhm,
So that way the title is there and then it still has the episode number, which
sure.
I don't know.
Yep, that's
Anyways,
not a bad
that's
it's
enough
not a bad
inside
idea either.
baseball. Let's
Yeah.
let's
Let's wrap this baby up. Thank you for listening. Have a happy, well, actually, as you're hearing this, it's already the new year. So I hope you have a happy new year. We haven't celebrated it yet, but this is like a weird time travel thing. So I hope you enjoy yours. And I will be back again next week. We have guests lined up for the next couple of weeks. So don't worry. This podcast is not going anywhere. And I hope you don't either. I will chat with you then.